that you can't refuse. We're flipping finds and showing you how. In this reseller life, let's own it now.
So, the next thing I wanted to talk about is, and this was where Adam comes in, that this was designed sort of around the discussion we'd had today. A lot of people are being very, very productive, and because I know this is something that wouldn't just relate to Adam, but people are being productive. They are doing drafts, they are taking photos, or maybe they're prepping their stock ready for photos, or maybe they're sourcing, ready to get stuff to list. Is all of that being busy the same as actually being productive? Should that be classed as productivity because it's not actually getting listings up for items to sell? If you've got lots of drafts sitting in there in your draft section on eBay that you haven't listed, g'day Dave, they're all necessary. Drafting listings, taking photos and sourcing are all necessary, but do they count as progress if the items aren't actually getting listed? Is there a risk of spending too much time on this preparation work while you're avoiding actually sending the items live? And if you are, what is the hold-up? Is the hold-up that you've got lots of drafts, but you haven't listed them because you haven't taken photos, because you don't like taking photos, or Rob, you're doing my head in. Okay, so Rob, for anyone that hasn't looked at it, Rob's just put a little photo up in the in the chat there, and he's showing us that he's got 1,286 drafts, which is a bit scary. But I'm going to say, is that in your card store, or is that the other one? Yeah, for him, that's one photography session being worked on by his virtual assistants, his VAs, in his media store. Yep, okay. So yeah, I mean, that's for him, that's how that works. So he's got lots of drafts, but they are getting listed. So yeah, you've got to think about, is there a risk of spending too much time on that prep work and not doing the actual listing process? So are you over organising instead of listing? And maybe you've got the most perfect storage system, so you're getting your inventory all set up, ready for sale, and you're getting the area where the listed goods are going to go, and they're all going to sit nicely in their boxes on their nice little shelves. That's all fine and well, but if you've got nothing listed to go in those boxes, then are you being productive? And when it comes to the actual draft pile, and we're not talking, on a Rob level here, but do you have unfinished drafts just sitting idle instead of being published? So what is the hesitation? And as I said, is it taking the photos because that's too hard? And if that's the case, then you need to sort out what's too hard about taking your photos, or why is taking photos a bottleneck, and, do something about that. Come in and ask for help, and we can give suggestions and help towards, what could be a good way of getting through that. Is it other things like pricing uncertainty? Are you umming and ahhing about what price you should list something at? Are you worried your draft isn't perfect enough to send live? Are you worried that it's just not right? So that's been a huge hurdle I've had to overcome, of not having perfect listings. As much as most of my listings are perfect, I will say. But, there are times with, as I said, my quick scan books that are only really cheap. I need to spend as little time as possible on those and just list them and get them up. I've implemented things in my store, like, for example, I have buckets, pricing buckets. So if I'm worried and I can't find information on books, for example, if I've got a first edition hardcover that's in reasonable condition, maybe it's an ex-library, and I've checked and it's not worth a heap of money, I will list mine at $29.95 or around about there, $29.88, whatever, and I will just list it at that price if I can't work out what the price is going to be, because that gets it listed, and maybe you just happen to get an offer. Now, a perfect example of that is a book that I posted today, which was called The Dragon something or other, but it was a vintage ex-library first edition hardcover fantasy book. Everybody else had theirs listed $20 including post. And I looked at this book, and this was a lovely book. And yes, it was an ex-library book, but it didn't have a heap of stuff on it, heap of stickers and writing and stuff in it. It was still a beautiful book. And I thought, this is worth more than that. And I listed it for that $29.95, and I sold it today for that price. And it was way more expensive than most of the other people had it listed. I think, one, they've looked at mine and saw, and they can see, because I add more photos than a lot of the booksellers. I'm not just putting in a stock photo and one other photo maybe. They're getting, on a book like that, they're getting probably 12 photos, so they can actually see the condition of the book. And two, they can see the information's there in the listing, because I take the time to make sure that those sort of listings, if I'm going to ask that sort of money that's for more than what everybody else is asking, they've got to have something to, I've got to have a reason for them to want my item. So that's, how I get around that. And where I'm going, I've sort of sidetracked a bit. So where I'm going with that is those pricing buckets. So I have certain buckets, Here's my pricing bucket for if I get a book and it's very old, it's in great condition, but it's very old, and I'm talking like it's probably from the 1950s or earlier, and there's no others of that book listed on eBay. I can't find it on eBooks. I do a Google search. I can't find it on any other book selling sites. I'm going to list it for probably $80, $90. I do sometimes list them, depending on the book and how it looks and what genre it is. Maybe I do list it over the $100 mark, but normally something like that, I have my bucket price is generally around that, $89 to $99 mark. I don't want to list it too high because I do want to sell it. And I generally find if I listed it under $100, then sooner or later someone will send me an offer, and maybe they send me an offer $50. Well, generally that book's going to have cost me $1, maybe $2 at the most. So hey, if you're going to send me an offer $50, I'm going to snap it up. Now Rob's just given a few notes here about doing his prep and stuff. So he says, so I'll just sidetrack from the talk. I'm just giving it a minute to talk about. So because Rob is a volume seller and it helps to know what he does. He says, personally I prep throughout the month, have everything in trays ready to go for photographing. Oh, you don't photo them, Rob. You're not photoing them, you're photographing them. Excellent. Everything checked, so I'm not getting distracted, whether it's of listable quality or not. Space on the shelf where throughout the month I've consolidated, stock tape and everything cleanish throughout the month, so on the day of when he's doing his photos, everything is ready, and if it's not, he will postpone doing his photographing until it is. Then one photography session a month and smash through that in a day. Good music, spreadsheet, photo station and everything prepped the night before. Photos sent to Lightroom, preset edit, then uploaded to the cloud with condition and skew spreadsheet, and the VAs get to work. I don't want to photograph any more than that. If I had someone physically here, then yes. Love it. Every person has to do what works for them, and as much as I would love to do that, physically I can't spend that long taking photos because of my back, so I have to do my photographing or my photoing, as everyone says. I have to do my photography in smaller sessions, so it's a matter of working out what works for you in that situation. So let's get back to the productivity thing. And that does come into the productivity. So are you better off if you don't like taking photos? Maybe do something like that and just take photo, and have a whole heap of photos stored. Now, the one thing I'd be a bit wary of, if you're not used to doing heaps and heaps of photos, ease into it a little bit and have some sort of organisation for those photos, because sometimes if you take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, hundreds is not a good term because it doesn't take long to rack up 400 photos, does it, in a day? I can do that in a session easy. So let's say thousands of photos. Do you know where to find the photos for the specific thing? Have you got things ordered in the right way so that you can find the photos? Is that going to be a bottleneck if you don't? And Rob is right. He says that's what works for me. It's going to be different for others. Everyone's story is different and unique. Find what works for you and don't be afraid to try new things and experiment. And that didn't come overnight. And I quite agree with that. It's a matter of working out where your bottlenecks are. and what's going to work for you. But yeah, doing bulk photography sessions like that might be something to consider if you're someone that doesn't like photography, and you can set aside, maybe start off one day a week or something and take enough photos that are going to last you for the week, and then you're only doing that once a week. And you kind of like need to get a balance between how much you're sourcing versus listing versus admin work. I mean, we've all got to do the admin work, especially when we're reselling and we're selling secondhand goods. There is a certain amount of prep with cleaning, washing, all those sorts of things. So, but you've got to have a balance. If that you are consistently doing more sourcing and admin and more drafting than you are listing, what is the point? Because if you don't list it, it's not going to sell. And I'm going to say, if you list it, it will sell. Well, most of the time. And oversourcing's always a thing. Well, we all know about a death pile, don't we? That's an issue. And I just have to say, my jeans, I don't have a death pile anymore. I'm like at the bottom of my jeans pile. So I'm at the point where I have to really make an effort to get out and source some more jeans. And I have to not be looking at any of the other clothing, just the jeans, because I do still have a bit of a death pile of other type clothing. Ray Potter says, I work through sequentially, sit down and clean, research and draft stock, mostly books and media. So that for a night, and then photograph and list the next day. Yeah, that's a bit like what I do. And one of the things I found was, rather than do the research, especially with media, with books, at one stage I was doing the research and then I was going and photographing the books and then using the photographs to come back and list. And that was silly because I had all the information there in front of me. So if I'm researching a price and comping prices and that sort of thing, I will actually create the draft for the book there and then while I'm going, so that then all I have to do is photograph and put those photos in the next day and they're ready to go. One of the things that I'm an advocate on is actually having a goal of how many you want to list each day. And I think that having that goal of a certain amount of listings helps with this being overproductive in the background, but not actually being productive with your listing. And doing a draft doesn't count towards your daily goal of listings. It's okay to do 50 drafts, but if none of those are getting sent live each day, or only one or two of them's getting sent live, what's the point? Drafting is not listing, and if you're not listing, you're not selling. My little friend GTP Chatty as I call him, did suggest one of the good things you can do to stay focused is, use timers, and says the Pomodoro technique to balance listing with prep work. And we have used that to great success in here, and I will be getting back into that. I'm a bit hairy-fairy with things at the moment and getting on here all day, only because of the heat. I'm finding if I'm on here talking, I'm not drinking. And if I'm not drinking enough, then I'm up all night with cramps because I haven't had enough fluid. And especially, like when it's still 36 degrees at nearly 9 o'clock at night. So that's just a little personal issue that I have. But the Pomodoro is perfect. And I found that is fantastic. And anyone that's got any health issues or mobility issues, it works so well for that, because it allows you to do work in short spurts, and then you have that we extended it to 7 minutes here in the group to allow us to have that little bit of a more decent talk in between. You get to have that break, but the important thing is, if you're standing doing something, make sure you do come and sit down during that break, or if you're sitting the whole time because you're drafting, make sure when you're having that break that you do get up and stand and have a stretch. Otherwise, you're not getting the full benefit of it. Maybe if sourcing's your issue, you need to set sourcing limits. Limit yourself to the amount of days that you go sourcing is one way around it. I definitely don't go sourcing more than once a week. Sometimes I go months, like I did before, because I was getting rid of my, working down that death pile that I had. But now it's at that point where I can go. But I have found that you shopping in my death pile and actually getting all that listed has made me be so much more selective now than when I do go sourcing than what I was before. I was just grabbing whatever was, a good price before, but now I'm just being so much more selective because I don't want that death pile to creep back up on me. So sourcing limits, whether it's the number of items, whether it's the amount of days. I mean, sourcing by number of items, I think for us is a little bit hard, because if you go out and you say that you're only going to buy 10 items for the next day, or maybe you're sourcing for the week and you're listing 10 a day, so you can't buy more than 70 items, and there's a bargain, you don't want to not buy the if there's a good buy, you don't want to miss that out. So I kind of feel buy time for me would work better, but each person may be different. Maybe you do need to have not go over this amount of items when you're sourcing. And
the problem is I keep getting these wonderful hauls.
Yep. And I know it's hard, but then, you've got to actually, at some point, you've pulled the pin on getting the hauls, get them listed, haven't you? And that's the other thing, is holding yourself accountable, and how do you do that? And there again is where we can help. Now, we're having a bit of a listing challenge at the moment, and each of us have got different goals, but in a nutshell, it was designed, from when we started, it was designed around about to get, John, what happened to you? Because, it was to do about 200 listings. Now you're up to 207 to go. What's going on? He mustn't be able to hear me right now. So I had, it started with Adam and myself, so, he wanted to get to 3,000, which was about 200 for him. So I said, well, if I do 200, that'll get me to 3,100. And so, we did it sort of that way. And that's why we've got, little things, most of us. And I've got live recording, so everyone knows I'm recording. And I should have mentioned it at the start. Sorry, everyone realises I am recording. So I did plaster it up everywhere. And you can see I say live recording and all that sort of stuff everywhere. So I do record these every single week, and to put the replays up on YouTube so that people that can't be here can actually go watch them. Which reminds me, while I'm on that subject, I will be changing the name of the reselling room after this workshop tonight. It will be changed to the recording room, and that again will help people realise that that's what goes on in this room is going to be recorded, because generally we only use this room for the workshops. So holding yourself accountable, come in here and set a goal with us, and maybe, challenge someone else and have a bit of a race, or set a goal that you and a buddy can work towards, and come into the workroom and work together and get that stuff listed. And do you want to reward yourself after you've gotten to a certain point? That's the thing. Do you need to give yourself rewards? I'm all for that. Bit of bribery never goes astray. So that's all my thoughts on whether does productivity really mean being productive if you're not actually sending your listings live. So if anyone else has got any thoughts on that, now's the time. I'm hearing crickets. So that means
I would agree with you, Leanne. Unless you're sending listings live, you're not getting sales. How can you claim to be productive?
Thank you, Ray. Yes, agree. I agree. I'm glad someone agrees with me.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly helps things. And at the end of the day, you're not going to sell anything. So if you're not getting them up, then you can't really call it being productive, because it's not going to get you anywhere really at the end of the day.
No, exactly. Yep. If you don't list it, it's not going to sell. John, are you able to talk?
I've listed while we've been on here.
Oh, good. I just would like to
But
know.
I've got no more photos.
Oh, yes, you've gone down to 205. But what I want to know, can you explain yourself? Like, we were having a race. It's supposed to be going down.
Well, I had a mess in other places, which I needed to sort out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm back to taking photos and that again.
Right.
I've worked out. I did get a new phone. I don't know if anyone else has had this. I bought a new phone. I had a phone from years ago. Bought a new phone. It doesn't take the photos as easy as the old one. Yet it's brand new. Has 5 bloody cameras, and it still can't take a decent product photo. Why is that? With lighting at night, it has to have.
What did you get?
I got an Ultra, a Samsung Ultra, and it's just, pretty ordinary actually. You can't control things as easy as I would like. Well, my lighting's no good, but it has been before.
You should be right with it. It does focus in by itself as well.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure you got it at the right. If you tap your finger on the screen, it should focus it in on the product.
I'm wanting to do it with a bit higher end, so I've gone into the Pro, but we won't talk about this part now.
Yes.
But just say that I've struggled with it.
We might be doing a bit of a deep dive on that next week, John.
Well, that'll be too late then.
Oh, I know, but, it might help some other people.
I've got a system that's working with that, so I have gone down. I've actually listed more than it shows because I've actually just added numbers to other things.
Yeah.
But I have taken photos of other things and
See, I would find that whole thing with the Samsung of having to tap on the screen to get it to focus, that would just drive me insane. Because that, to me, is an extra step that I don't need to take.
That's right.
And I'm going to say, when it does come to photography, and you've all probably heard me say it before, anyone that's listened to anything I've said, is that, the less steps that you take with your photos, the better it is, because that's all time and effort and all extra time that it takes to get your photos ready to list. I take my photos now, I don't have to do anything to them. I don't have to make them, from rectangle to square. I don't have to take the background out most of the time because it's perfectly fine. Grey might not be the perfect, background, but it is perfect for getting perfect colours with the clothing, but it means that I don't have to worry about changing the white balance and all that sort of thing each time because of the lighting. It works like a grey card and does all that for me. So that was one of the steps I put in place to make sure that I didn't have to take those extra steps. I don't want to have to crop my photos, all those things.
Mine, I've dropped it too many times. It gets a bit wonky.
You're sorry, what?
I've dropped my phone too many times.
Oh, yeah, they don't like being dropped, Sandra, I'm going to say. But yeah, I've got photography on the list to talk about in an upcoming thing so that we can all help each other. Maybe tips that one person uses. I mean, I can give tips for the iPhone, but that doesn't necessarily work the Samsung, as John and I were talking about the other day. So, yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't want to mess with my photos after. So I've been trying to do it where I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I've done some other things like made a lot of boxes, which were really good when I went to my... if anyone knows me, I've been making boxes to put in my storage units, like put in my shelving, to put everything in it. And I think I've made, I want to say 50 boxes in the last week to put in there. I've got another 20 ready to go. No, it must be a bit more than that. We've got 15 ready to go now. And then I've got another 40 to make.
Yeah.
At least.
Well, you're getting there.
It's just to control my stock.
Yeah.
That's what I want to be, is in control.
Yeah. and that's the thing. We've always got to have those things that we have to do in the background, whether it is making new boxes for shelving or whether it is, look, a while ago when I first, I'm going to say a while ago, let's go back 2 years when I first started, and I had all different hangers, and a lot of the hangers that I was using were thick. And thick hangers, even the thick plastic hangers, they actually take up room on the rack. So I couldn't fit as many pieces of clothing on the rack as I wanted because the coat hangers were too thick. So then I found the perfect coat hanger that would allow me. My other issue was with that I had plus size clothing, and a lot of plus size clothing, I don't know why they do it, but they do. The manufacturers make them quite wide in the neck, so women's tops will slip off the hangers if you haven't got a bigger hanger. So I found the perfect hangers, and they are the felt ones with just the wire bit that goes over the rack. They're just a very flat, skinny hanger, but they work really, really well for what I use them for. So then there was that process of swapping everything over. And if I had spent the time doing that all at once, I wouldn't have been getting listings up. It was something that had to be done to make extra room so I could list more stuff eventually. But doing it all at once would have, meant that I wasn't getting my daily goals of listing up. So we've all got those little things that we have to do in the background, but we need to perhaps set aside time for those and still make sure we're doing a listing.
Shipping hacks and offers, deals galore. You'll be cashing in like never before. From Big Granny's reseller news, from cool collections to hot reviews. We're moving stock and smashing goals. Let's watch those treasures turn into